Thought I'd start off with a piece of artwork I just did. It kind of displays the current state of being for many of us. So, anyway, here I am. Um, I thought today I would talk about joy and love, or that sort of state we can be in when we're fully ourselves, fully our essence. So I often tell people that if they want to understand who they are and figure it out, whatever it is, they need to go back to the times they felt pure joy. And it's happened to nearly all people. I think I've met one person who really couldn't remember that, but she had suffered a lot of abuse and that kind of thing. So joy is that that feeling of transformation, no, transportation somewhere where you are totally in the situation you're in. It can be seeing something beautiful that takes your breath away, or it could be suddenly realizing how perfect everything is around you, the birds singing, the sun shining, whatever. That mind, when that happens, the mind shuts down and we can be who we truly are. So, what I always ask is if you want to know that, then tune into that feeling that you had once, maybe in childhood. I know I had that experience in childhood several times. That is who you are. That is that consciousness that experiences that joy is your essence. So it's tangible. So otherwise, spirituality becomes vague. It's like, oh, well, when I turn off my mind, maybe I'll become enlightened or something like that. Or when I die, I'll go to heaven. No, that's abstract. That's not concrete. When you think about joy, you're you're you can think about it in a concrete way. Yes, I experience that. Yes, I am more than I am now, which is kind of overcome by all kinds of concerns of paying bills, relationships, your career, this, that, and the other is your children, all this stuff that's constantly turning around your head, your friends who have problems and, you worry about them. All those things fade away when you feel joy. That doesn't mean they stop existing. They just are not occupying your mind. So that when you are in that consciousness of joy, you can then help them more than you could ever do that because you're never completely who you are, so you never completely give of yourself. I experienced this in athletics, so I would be able to experience the joy of just playing the game. Like my game was basketball. So sometimes I would get into such a state, and it was weird. I would just know where to go at every moment. Any shot I put up went in. I didn't even look at the basket. I remember once I was falling out of bounds in the corner and just put up a shot, ooh, went in. And then the next time I would just know exactly where to grab the rebound. And I knew I could win this game. And I did when I had that feeling. Now, that was rare. I'm not that good. I, you know, I would mess up all the time because I was overthinking or whatever it is. Um, so it wasn't a matter of skill per se, although I did practice, I did work at it. I really was, not great, not terrible, mediocre, maybe slightly better than that. But when I got in those states, I was really completely masterful in my game. I just knew what to do. That now that feeling was again was very rare, but that was because I felt joy. My mind was completely blank. I was just completely into my situation. I read about it uh, once when I read a book by Bill Russell, who was a great player for the Boston Celtics and won, I don't know, 9 or 10 championships. I think he was the most won the most championships of any player. And he would describe the game that was being played on the court. And so these stars, these people that were really great players that he would play against and with, everything slowed down and every movement was perfect. There was no animosity, there was no competition. It just played out like a dance for him. And he described this very well. And other athletes have described that state of what was later called flow. Uh, that is the state, that is a kind of joyous state, it's flow. When you're just in the flow, you can learn that in all kinds of ways. There are techniques to work at it so you can get near it, but it's not a never a question of like wanting to do it. It just happens. That's the trick. The trick is just to allow it to happen by contacting that level within you that feels joy. From joy, you can understand love. Love, when you feel joy, you understand that everything is connected. We're all cosmically connected. That realization brings that feeling of love. And once I had a vision, I don't know how many years ago, quite a while ago, of the kingdom of heaven. So I was completely in this state of bliss, and I could see visually an entire valley uh, that in a sense was there were there were mountains over here and over there, but really it was immense and it felt endless. And as I was in that sort of blank state, I had been in a I was meditating at the time, no drugs. I just was meditating, and as I do all the time. And then that came over me, not as a technique. I didn't do special chants or anything. It was just my usual stillness meditation. I felt that valley of delight, of joy, and then the thought came in my mind: we swim in love. Everything is love. Now, that makes no sense. We know there's wars, we know there's torture, we know there's child abuse at a level most of us couldn't understand until quite recently with the Epstein files and all that, all those things. And it goes really deep and really far. And those of us who have been paying attention kind of know about that and have known about it. But let me put it another way. That disappears when you're swimming in love, when you're feeling joy. Now, it disappears from the mind. And the spiritual story is that when you do that, when you're able to feel joy, when you're able to understand love and love everyone, and I never understood that until really the past decade, maybe I began to understand it, how everybody I met, I loved, not in the carnal sense, just connecting with them as human beings. There's parts of everybody that feel so precious. And I could connect with that unless I was over concerned with some things or wanting something or there were things that obscured that for the most part, but when people came up to me, I could feel that essence of who they are. And that's beautiful. And so when I am with other people, I try to brush away my considerations of my comfort or this or that. Now, and I don't always do it, of course, but when I do, it's like brings that love and that joy. And at least conceptually, I always know that these human beings in front of us are precious. Even I may not even feel it all the time, but that's a practice. So that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about conceptual frameworks in my last video. So conceptual frameworks are arrangements in our mind that help the mind organize uh, our ability to express our essence, our true selves, our God nature, okay, whatever you want to call it. When we have that framework, and people have used religion for that, and some it can work, but most of the religions practiced today are, and I'm going to talk about that later, are not quite adequate to our current condition. Okay. There are aspects of every religion that's wonderful and that harkens back to that idea of essence and harkens back to that idea of purity. But uh, things have accrued that make it very hard to follow a religious path and experience that beauty and that essence. Often, and particularly in Christianity, the emphasis is on judgment. I'm good, they're bad. I'm a Christian, they're not. Therefore, they're bad. They're going to hell. That's been a pox, if you want to call it, on that in Christianity from early on. Orthodox, what I call Orthodox Christianity. There are other Christian um, ways of looking at things that emphasize love and don't talk about fear or anger or judgment. I don't know how, I can explain how from my reading of Christian history. I understand how that developed, but that's not the point here. Right now, we are facing our situation today, which was very much like that piece of artwork I brought up here. You can see there's all this stuff going on, right? Everywhere. It's like crazy. It's a crazy world we live in. So religion is not quite adequate to that challenge. So that framework we're creating has to be based on love and joy. So when we remember our feeling of joy, we're doing a spiritual practice as important as um, meditation or a prayer or anything like that. And we'll talk about all those things in another video. But right now, I want you to understand that that foundation to the framework has to be joy, our true, as I said last time, our true nature. So that starts. So what brings us joy? Okay. So when we know something brings us joy, like a child, or a son or daughter, a grandchild, a lover, a wife, a husband, well, yeah, sometimes they give us joy and sometimes pain, but I think we need to focus on the possibilities involved there. So our framework consists of things that give us joy. If our husband or wife doesn't give us joy, we have to say, well, we have to make our own judgment, whether it's worth considering maintaining that. On the other hand, one of the things we've agreed on when we do get married is that we have pledged to be with this person under all conditions. And these pledges and these vows are very important because when we violate those vows, again, thinking in terms of conceptual frameworks, when we violate the vows, we're violating our integrity. And that integrity stems from our essence. There's when you feel that joy and that connection with others, that love, we know that that is our goal in life. And marriage, if you're talking about that, is its goal is to maintain that essence, is to be good for us and bring us to this joy and love. It's specifically designed for that purpose. If we're totally selfish and totally involved with our sensual interests, not that there's anything wrong with sensuality, It's just we have to weigh that against the possibility of of joy that is part of our vow with our partner. So that's very important, and it's very important to make vows. And I'd never thought that before. I mean, I've married several times. Obviously, I didn't stick to my vows, but neither did my wives. So, you know, I learned through practice that really I could have, we could have maintained that structure had we understood what we were actually making a contract about. The contract was to increase our joy through helping increase the joy of your partner. So that's just an example. And so we build our lives around these things that give us joy. So do we have children? And again, having a child is a vow in itself. There's no going back. They're there. There, you created these kids. You have made, by making them, you have made the vow to take care of them as appropriate. So that again builds up our conceptual framework of certain structures. Ultimately, those kids and partners could die or whatever, or we could totally mess up and you know, we could violate the vows and so on and so forth. But we are still that joy that once we violate our vows, whatever they may be, that doesn't mean that we're bad. We're never bad. That essence in who we are is good. Our structures are bad. The fear that you're never going to enjoy what you're never going to get to travel. You're never going to get to have sex with many women of different sizes, shapes, and ages. That's something that young men have this sort of, oh well, I know I did. I thought, oh, I could make love to all these women. These are mental structures that actually obscure things because in fact, when you have sex with this person or that person, after that, well, okay, that was nice, but that I don't feel a lot better. I feel maybe I've achieved something, but it doesn't really mean that much. At least that's been my experience and the experience of other people I've talked to, usually. So unless their aim is different. Some people have an aim of obscuring that purity, that pure essence of who we are. And these people do what we would call evil things because they move away from the essence, move away from the purity of our being that's based in joy and love, and move into the area of control and power. This is what I think is being displayed in a major way in these stories about these Epstein files, but those files are like just a little tiny tidbit. It's much deeper than that. And it's about power, manipulation, control, and moving away from essence, making sure that those people who who's who's who you tortured, and then you drink their blood for this whatever substance I forgot now. Adrenochrome, is that what it is? I think it's that. They drink that in order to feel powerful, and it's supposed to have all these qualities of keeping you young, et cetera, et cetera. So that's denying that person who has also that purity, that pure soul of who they are, denying their ability to do that by causing them extreme pain. And then you profiting from that, not for your essence, not from the center of your soul, not from the nature associated with God and Jesus and Buddha and whatever, that perfect being that you have that's pure, that experiences pure joy, who and loves because that connection is so real. So that even though we're very separate, we're still connected. And that joy that we experience is unique to us. It's not like another person's joy. So that other person's joy has their own joy, their own love, their own soul that's unique to them. And when we destroy that by deliberately making them suffer, we're moving away from our own essence and we're worshiping, if you want to call it that, another another part of consciousness. And that consciousness is often described as Satan or the devil or whatever, but usually those symbols are cartoonish. In fact, these things are very real. When you are totally selfish, and I've been like totally selfish at times, so I know the flavor of what that's like. So when we do that, we injure um, our soul, and it makes it harder to access. It makes us less able to experience true joy, which 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 is where we also, like I said, we all connect. So when we look at the world of money and politics and all the rest of it, we see, and I've seen this in my lifetime, greater growth in that evil. And so as we see that growth in evil, I mean pure evil and worship of evil, worship of money, worship of having great vacations and cosmetic surgery so it can be sexy and attract who for women, that's one of their little sins. And then men, other, having power over this or, having sex with children and stuff like that and kind of break all the rules. And so you feel above everybody else and all these other people are just nothing. And your ego, that part of you that's represented by the left brain, uh, that is calculating and solving problems and sort of wiping away all the right brain, which in fact is that part of us that experiences joy and that experiences the soul, experiences the connection. Um, that part of us is that part of these people goes down. And just for your information, the right side of the brain kind of controls the left side of the body, and the left part of your brain controls the right side of the body. Now we'll talk about that in the future, and all the neuroscience that has been developed that kind of brings all this soul stuff together. This is not just woo woo stuff. This is real, real. This is really where biology, neuroscience, and physics all are going in the same direction of connection, of increased consciousness, and all that. So let's go through that in, let's see where we are. Um, let's go through that next time. I'm going to try to do one of these, like I said, every day or every other day. And so I will leave you with this and some music.